Okay, hello and welcome to another Lit Matters. The title of this video is Why Study Macbeth? And it is meant as a bit of an introduction to the text, to Macbeth or even to Shakespeare. For those who are not familiar with it, don't know it, are being forced to study it and don't understand why, or just unaccustomed to Shakespeare and perhaps wondering what's all the fuss about. Why is he the most studied author in the history of the written word? What's the point of him? Why are people interested in Macbeth? Why is it on the syllabus? Why is it in my exam? Etc. So it's meant as a little introduction to people, perhaps to pique your interest, to make you understand a bit what it's about, its themes, how you can get into it, and why, I hope. There's many aspects of it which are hugely enjoyable, hugely relevant to a modern audience, and things that you are probably into, the nature of crime or heroes or lies and deception and tricks and various things. So these are some of the things I'm gonna go through. First is, what is heroism? Who's a hero? What makes a hero? What's a hero or a king or a leader like? Then questions around what is natural and what's not natural, and perhaps the things we want to think are natural about ourselves are really not natural. One of the things the play uncovers. What's with all the violence? It's a very, very, very violent play. It doesn't need to be this violent. It's gratuitous in places. Macbeth is chopping people up, sticking their head on the battlements at the start. He's opening people up, sticking his knife into their belly button and ripping it up to their jaws. There's endless references to blood. He's wading in a river of blood at one point. There's infanticides, murders of kids. There's endless violence. What's the point of all of that? Why? Some ideas about duality and two opposites in one. The nature of power, something I'm going to discuss what it does to people. Trust and betrayal are key ideas. As well as a couple of extra bits around the fate, gender, and perhaps Machiavellianism. Machiavelli being an important Italian writer and an influence on Shakespeare. I think a decent place to start for this is to think about, what do you lie about? We all lie. Those who say they don't lie are lying right there. Everyone lies, I think. And everyone presents themselves or presents realities about themselves or their life or their world in certain ways. Some people are outright liars. Some people are not so outright, more sort of covert liars than overt lies. But everyone does lie, so it's worth asking yourself, what do you lie about? Okay. So the play asks us, what is honesty, what is integrity, and what. So the play gets us thinking about the lies that leaders will tell, the lies that people in power will tell, or the myths they will believe about themselves even. So that's a useful starting point. Okay. If we start to think about superficiality, a big idea in the background running the whole way through Macbeth is superficiality, i.e. what is on the surface is not reality. It lies, it deceives, it hides the reality. And here's a perfect modern example, which also touches on the idea of a hero, of a king, of a leader, of a president. Mr. President, here he is, that human fart himself, Donald Trump. There's how he presents himself. That's his Wikipedia page. Okay, very nice, very smiley, very smart, very friendly, kind of avuncular, which means kind of like a nice old uncle. But of course, you and I know there is a different reality behind this, and it's often a much nastier reality, a much weirder reality, a much more orange reality, a much more lunatic, violent one. And of course, his real self, he would often hide away, whether that's the racism or the misogyny or the Islamophobia, various things. In some cases, he wasn't very good at hiding it away or couldn't be bothered to hide it away for long. But half the time he's presenting himself as a very noble person, a very selfless person, doing this quest for power for other people, suffering for other people. And one thing I think Shakespeare really digs at in Macbeth is he blows out of the water this medieval idea of this loyal, noble king. And who is a king? This kind of Disney-fied version of medieval romance. A king was good and wise and loved by his people, and everyone loved the noble king, and he had a long and happy reign, and it was all peaceful and secure, and everyone loved it, blah, blah, blah. That has never been the way. For people who have taken power in any country, in any century, in any millennium, has almost always been a process of violence. In the time Macbeth is set, there's no police, there's no justice system, there's no courts, there's no lawyers, there's no sort of CCTV or kind of things that people might use to present reality. There is just violent people, as there is always violent people, and ruthless people, as there is always ruthless people. And at this time, it's dog eat dog, and who's got bigger teeth? And the one likely to be the most violent and the most ruthless and with the biggest army is the one that takes the power and the money and the big castles and the security and the resources and everything that goes with that. It's not a noble, loyal, lovely, selfless person. It's someone who wants power. It's someone with that ego, like you can see there, if you can see through the orangery of it all. We can't point too much fun at Americans across the other side of the pond because it's very similar in Britain. Here we go. Here's how he presents himself, Mr. Johnson, top left, and there's a very different reality. And I would argue, a personal opinion, he's one of the most fraudulent individuals, the most superficial individuals. But again, I think he underlines the point that don't assume your leaders are benign and kind and loving and there for good reasons. They've probably had to step over quite a lot of other ruthless people who want the power they've got in order to get there. And they haven't muscled those other people out of the way through kindness and friendliness and being generous and helping their mum out. They've probably got what they've got because they've got sharp elbows, and they're not afraid to step over other people, and they don't mind lying, and they don't mind deceiving people and bullying their way to power. Okay, so I think Shakespeare gets you to think about what is a king. Don't think a king is automatically good and noble. It's probably gangster number one. Who is the biggest gangster and who is going to seize that power? If someone is. And I think to further underline my point, you see this everywhere. I think this is why Macbeth is still so relevant, so modern. You look at the way Putin operates. I think you look at the way certainly the Saudi prince operates with the journalist Jamal Khashoggi, who was executed and murdered for publishing the truth about the Saudi royal family. This is the case across the world, from China to North Korea, Turkey to Hungary to Brazil to Russia. They're all led by people who have gained power in very ruthless ways, who use violence to intimidate, who hide reality and who deceive people of what is actually going on in order to consolidate their own power. And then once they're in power, they step it up and they find themselves having to be even more ruthless and even more violent and even more murderous. I hope none of them are listening to this. No, come knocking on my house. But I think it's the truth. I think it's something Shakespeare's pointing out back then, and it's something which is depressingly still a massive reality today. So don't trust your leaders. Question your leaders. Don't let people have power over you without your consent, I think is in the background to Macbeth. And I should point out that it's not just male leaders around the world. Some of my feminist colleagues stuck this under my nose and said, have you seen which countries have been best under the coronavirus? It's all the ones with female elected politicians. And how could one disagree? The key lesson in Macbeth is not to be underestimating women. When there's discussions of gender, another thing Shakespeare does is exploding sort of sexist kind of myths about women from medieval literature. You know, you've got the damsel in distress in the tower, like Rapunzel. Oh, I just need saving. I need helping. I'm waiting for a man to come and save me. Or like Sleeping Beauty. Oh, I'm just going to sleep here for 100 years, wait for a man to come along. And these very limiting ideas of femininity or womanhood that Disney have seized on and kind of reinforced miserably. Shakespeare was destroying that 500 years ago, because Lady Macbeth is a real piece of work. She's formidable. She's a driving force throughout much of the play, and she's proves herself to be far more competent, far more confident, far more capable and intelligent than most of the male leaders in the play. There's a delightful bit when, okay, there's going to be loads of spoilers throughout this video, so if you haven't watched or read the play, then spoiler alert. There's a lovely bit just after King Duncan has been murdered by the Macbeths, and Macduff is banging down the door and saying, "Wakey, wakey, wakey." Just before that, Lady Macbeth has said, let's go put on our pyjamas, basically. Let's go put on our nightgowns. Otherwise people will see that we've got blood on our clothes. We need to pretend we're asleep. It's another surface, another layer of deception. And then Macduff's banging down the door saying, "Wake, wake, wake, alarm, horror, horror, horror. The king is dead. Everyone get up." And she sort of comes out in a nightie, yawning. "Oh, what's going on? What's all this?" She's orchestrated it all. She's engineered the whole bloody deed the night before. And all the men kind of go, "Oh, well, a lady can't see this. It's not for a lady's eyes. Oh, she's far too fair, and she can't even see this." Massive dramatic irony being there that we know that she has engineered it all, and she does a lovely mocking them almost. "Oh, help me, ho, hence!" Pretends to faint. "Oh, help, get me out of here quickly! I can't even see." Creates a distraction because Macbeth's answers to some of Macduff's initial questions are not very convincing. When did this happen? What did you know? When did you know this? Macbeth is not so quick on his feet. Lady Macbeth sees this and she's like, "I've got to create a distraction, one, and I've got to get myself out of here, too." And she uses the sort of stupidity of the other male leaders, who then promise to go and put on manly readiness. She uses their stupidity and their sexism against them by getting herself out of there. Yeah, they say, "Let's go put on manly readiness," i.e. our armour. We need our armour, our men clothes to talk about this. And again, another surface, another disguise. But she throughout is a real force. Certainly not to be underestimated, and certainly no notions in Shakespeare that women are any less capable or any the less devious and evil, right? And certainly not all necessarily wallflowers. So some lovely lines from Lady Macbeth there. She's speaking directly to the supernatural, to the forces of darkness. "Come, you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts." She wants the power of a man. When she's saying "unsex me" here, she wants to have the violence and the agency of a man in those times. And she taunts her husband. When he's going a bit cold, he's getting cold feet over whether to do the murder or not. "When you durst do it, then you were a man." And there's lots of plosive, harsh sounds, that cacophony there. Questioning his manhood, questioning his masculinity, unless he commits this murder. And that's something actually that Macbeths get confused with. They equate masculinity with violence, and how violent are they prepared to be shows how much of a man he's prepared to be. And I think Shakespeare, that's another myth Shakespeare explodes. Again, perhaps for another video on masculinity and gender, but Macduff realises this, and he is not just a warrior, but he's able to feel. So he's got the head, the heart, the arm. The head being the brain, the heart being the sort of integrity and the goodness, and the arm being the fight. Macbeth loses the heart, loses the goodness, and it's debatable how much of the head he had in the first place, or how much that was her head and her brain driving things. He always has the arm the whole way through. He can always fight. But when Macduff learns about the murder of his own children, Malcolm says to him, "You must use it as revenge, use it as violence." And he says, "Dispute it like a man, take it as a man and man up kind of thing." And he says, "Yeah, I will, but first I will feel it as a man." I.e., there's more to being a man than just being violent. You must have a heart and loved ones, and you must grieve, and you must be able to emote and have emotions. A couple of other examples of Lady Macbeth being far from the sort of damsel in distress. She says to Macbeth how ruthless she would be prepared to be, or in fact, how reliable she would be, how much she would stick to her word. Famous line, "I would, while it was smiling in my face, have plucked my nipple from his boneless gums and dashed the brains out, had I so sworn." So that is preceded by the lines that I have given suck and know how tender 'tis to love the babe that milks me. So she says, I have been a mother and I breastfed, and if I had said I was going to do something, even if it was something as horrible as murdering my own child, I would do it. So you should do what you said you were going to do, is her kind of her suggestion. But the language she uses is so forceful and violent. The boneless scum is the image of innocence. Doesn't even have his teeth yet. Dashed the brains out, not just removed or taken, but there's a violence to her language there. And then a very, very important quotation: "Look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it." Again, coming back to the idea of superficiality, and so the idea being that you look like something, but on the surface, but the reality is very, very different underneath. You are a different animal. You are perhaps the opposite. And here you have lovely juxtaposition of innocence and perhaps associations of the divine or godliness or Jesus Christ, juxtaposed with the serpent, i.e. Satan or the devil. And you have also this reminder that nature contains opposites. Nature contains good and bad. So perhaps when we're thinking about what is natural, and there's lots of this discussion and lots of evidence within Macbeth of nature being very, very violent. Again, Macduff refers to the murder of his family and children as Macbeth as a hell kite. This bird of prey from hell, and that takes away all his pretty chicks and their dam. So all his kids and their mum in one fell swoop. Like a bird of prey would. So it's a reminder that there is violence in nature, and there is ruthless violence to survive in nature. That's the whole way through Macbeth. A number of references to the owl or the falcon or various birds of prey, the hawk or the raven, etc. That bubbles under throughout. And it makes us question, well, if there is good and evil in nature so obviously, and if there is violence in nature so frequently, how can we assume that it's not natural for humans to be evil? It's not natural for humans to be very violent. And that's a bit of a kind of disturbing thought Shakespeare gives us, because that's not how we want to see ourselves or what we tell ourselves we're like. Again, it's back to the lies we tell ourselves, perhaps the myths we tell ourselves, that we are all good, or that we are holy, or all the rest of it. So lots of examples of where Lady Macbeth is a real force.